Monday. Guilt. I woke up with a throbbing headache and the taste of glue on my lips. Well, miraculously, the taste of the duct tape someone had gagged me with. Somebody wanted to make sure fire wasn't on my list of options at the moment, and they were wise to do so, considering how I acted earlier. A strong line of rope had been secured around my sides, keeping my arms pinned in place, suggesting I wasn't going anywhere, and somebody planned on keeping it that way. Applejack. She was sitting adjacent to me in the barn, with her back against the wall. She'd obviously been keeping watch, but the poor pony was so exhausted she'd fallen asleep with her hat tilted down on her eyes. I couldn't blame her. We'd been running for so long and fighting so hard, I doubt even a bomb going off could wake her. She didn't even react to the dreadful telltale hiss of infected as near the barn. Helplessly, my heart stopped as I watched this horrible thing drag itself into the barn. It must have followed us from Ponyville. It lurched forward with a low hissing rasp spilling from its muzzle. Smaller than the other infected, but still threatening. This particular creature was colored tangerine, with splashes of blackened and burnt fur over its frame. It dragged itself towards the uncharred and stubby little hooves, only to pause a moment to peer around the room. Violet spikes of mane jutted out over glossy lavender orbs, the small, pale, writhing appendages sprouting from his back. I couldn't pull my eyes away from it. It didn't notice me, or maybe it did and it just didn't care. It drew forward with another little trembling hiss, and my eyes widened when I realized what was happening. It gave a clicking cough and started to move towards Applejack. She was asleep, and only a few feet away from me, but my arms were bound and I couldn't speak. Applejack! Wiggling in the rope, I tried desperately to make a noise. Call out. Something. Anything. I had to warn her the infected had found us. I had to wake her up. I cried out. She was so exhausted. We'd been running from infected for days, and Applejack was particularly a heavy sleeper. She didn't notice me and the monster dragging itself closer and closer. No. Applejack, wake up! I kicked and squirmed and only managed to roll myself over onto my side. Applejack! I kicked furiously and writhed on the ground. I didn't have the strength to stand. Why did I have to be so weak? I screamed again. Applejack didn't move. It was crawling closer and closer, hissing all the way while I tried to cobble together some sort of plan. If only I could breathe my fire. I watched, ravaged by guilt as the infected crawled over to Applejack. Oh, I knew who it was. I knew in my heart of hearts that this blackened little charred nightmare creature had once been a friend of mine. I knew those sweet innocent eyes, and the crisp, burnt orange fur. I knew that pony. All I could do was watch in agony as it approached us. No, it approached Applejack. It was after uninfected blood. That's why it didn't bother looking at me. That's why I was invisible to it. I shifted my hips and tried to edge towards Applejack. With enough frantic twisting and kicking, I managed to start headway towards the pair. The monster was faster than me, though. It approached Applejack and started climbing up to her. Was it going for her neck? A single killing blow? I needed to get Applejack's attention. Now. But there was nothing I could do. For all my frantic kicking and wiggling, I was helpless to watch as a tragedy unfolded in front of me. My tail caught the side of the barn with a thump, and Applejack shifted in her sleep. It only took me a moment to realize what I had to do, and in that minute, I did it. I crashed my tail as hard as I possibly could against the wall. Whoomp! It hurt, but it didn't matter. It was noise. I was making noise. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. I wound my tail back for one final smack of the barn's wall, and crack. It was like hitting a rock. You know what that feels like? It hurt. A lot. I'm fairly sure I broke my tail in that single blow. The pain was like fire racing through my ribs, my hips, and I screamed in agony. Even through the gag, it was loud. Loud enough to jerk Applejack into a wakeful state. In one swift move, she put the infected pony down. Hard. One brutal kick was all it took, and it was hard to know which was worse. The guilt of watching that happen, or knowing that I created the problem in the first place. Never sad. She never did anything for me. You know, that's Zecora. I like her. A whole bunch. It hurts so much. And I think it's starting to kick in now. I'm finding facts. Nap in a room. I'm sorry, farmhouse. Throw a party on the moon. Pancakes. Pancakes are beautiful. And that's the dream I had. I'm sure it's important. Pinky sense too. Pinky would throw a party like that. Maybe she can help me figure it out. Maybe. Maybe. She and Zecora. It's pretty awesome. I remember rolling around on my side in agony. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was gagged. The best I could do was muffled shouts. My arms were pinned by the rope, so I couldn't right myself. My tail was at an awkward position, and it drove white-hot spikes of fire through my rump. I sobbed silently while trying to fight myself. Every second was a nightmare. Please make it stop. Applejack didn't notice. She was too busy inspecting the unconscious infected. Or dead. I don't know. It didn't matter. I can't describe the agony I was in. I guess I was screaming wildly, and Applejack finally came rushing over to me. She didn't pull the gag off. I wanted her to pull the gag off. Let me scream. Please. But she refused. She refused. She let me suffer. How was she punishing me? Was this what I deserved for what I did to Scoot? No. I don't deserve to write her name. Is this what I get for that poor filly? Is that what she felt? Char Sugar Cube, I can't let you draw attention to us, she hissed. She ducked down in the cellar for a moment. I couldn't see through all the tears. I couldn't recognize anything. I screamed through the gag. I didn't even hear the footsteps of the ponies gathering around me. Looks quite severe. Broke his poor rear, some pony said. Through my haze pain, I recognized the voice. That perfect rhyming scheme could only be Zecora. Even though I only heard half the rhyme, I knew it was here. She must have been hiding in the cellar with the rest of the survivors of the town. Then I kinda went a little trip for a while. I think that Yep, I wrote an entry. Never mind that part. Let's just say for how bad I was feeling before is how good things felt thanks to Zecora. I remember her setting my tail for me, and rubbing it down with special salve that was supposed to accelerate healing. She didn't know if it had any effect on dragons, though, so we'll have to wait and see. Since I wouldn't stop screaming in all this extreme circumstances, she gave me some special medicine and she made me promise not to tell. I get it, though. I mean, really. If it is the end of the world, might as well live it up, right? The end of the world. That's what it feels like, anyway. Wow. I feel great. Put me right to sleep. Well, I think I went right to sleep. After I made the last entry. I can't really make it out. It wasn't making any sense at all. I only remember bits and pieces of writing it. Something about a party on the moon with Pinkie Pie? I'm only semi-conscious now while I write this. I'm falling asleep again. Still feeling good, though. I wonder what day it is. Anyway, I just woke up in Applejack's bed. That's where I wrote this entry. I don't know what's going on, but I don't... Wait. Something's outside the door. Thursday. Tartarus. Zecora hurled herself into the room with me and pressed her back against the door. Her mane was wild and her eyes were frenzied. She had the rasp. Before I could call for help, Zecora pounced on me. Roughly, she forced me down with the strength of an earth pony, with my cheek pressed firmly against the floor. Her hooves on my neck meant she could direct my head, and in turn where my fire breath would go. Clever. She lowered her head down close to mine. I'd never heard Zecora sound so deadly serious before, but I almost cried. I think your life would behoove if you chose not to move. Zecora snarled in my ear. I stared up at her fearfully, and while she pinned me down, she had a knife. I don't know where she got it from. Oh, Celestia. She cut herself. She drove the knife into her leg, and a burst of blood splattered all over my face. I screamed. I was horrified. I didn't know what was going on, and I begged for her to let me go. I screamed for her to get off me. A moment passed before she did just that. She released me, and I scrambled to my feet, wiping the blood off my face with the closest thing I could find. The bedsheet. This was insane. The horror world had got insane. Was this how the infection spread? Blood transmission? I just started feeling better, and now I was covered in infected blood. What is wrong with you? I screamed furiously. I wildly looked for a weapon or something I could use to defend myself, before I realized Zecora was no longer attacking me. No, she was just sitting there, staring at me with wide eyes, mouth agape. A moment passed, and it hit me. I was disgusted, not frenzied. I didn't want Zecora's blood. I wanted it off me. I was cured. Okay, maybe not cured. I still had a headache, but this was something important. Zecora seemed almost giddy and gabbled all over the place. She looked extremely proud of herself. She had devised a plan for a cure? Before I could react, she scooped me up onto her back and turned towards the door. Things look grim for the farm, I fear. You and I must get out of here, Zecora said cryptically. Things looked grim for the farm? How long was I out? Whatever that stuff Zecora gave me did the trick. I could only feel a faint sort of uncomfortable buzz from around my hips. If my tail were still broken, I'd never have guessed. But if I had then, what I know now, I'd have rather just stayed asleep. Zecora put us down the stairs at a breakneck pace. We slammed into the floor and shot through the front door like a missile. At first I thought it was daylight. That's how bright it was. No. That was just the fire. The orchards were engulfed in flame. Every tree was a huge, burning fireball, and a hazy fog of smoke clouded the air. The focal point of the blaze was the barn in the distance. Some sort of explosion? Burning bodies were everywhere. Infected and survivors were scrambling all over the farm, screaming for help and gurgling last breaths. It was chaos. It was absolute Armageddon. This was Tartarus. I had actually died in Applejack's bed, and this was my punishment for failing Scootaloo. Zecora burst forward, running as fast as she could through the roasting apple trees. I hung onto her as tightly as possible, still dizzy from the medication she gave me earlier. Had she healed me? Was a cure for this? What had happened to the farm? How was this blaze started? Something tackled us from the side, sending Zecora and I to the ground. Above us, a tree glowed with a bright flaring light. The charred apples rained down around us. Zecora climbed to her hooves and limped over in front of me. I should have ducked behind her, maybe climbed onto her back and made use of my fire breath. But I couldn't move. I stared. Twilight stared back at me. She was different. She was wildly pale, and her fur was in shambles. The left part of her body had been badly burnt, and she gave an animalistic hiss. There wasn't a spark of intelligence left behind her eyes. She peered past me as Zecora. I was wrong. Twilight wouldn't attack her if she had the rasp. Good for us. Right? She drove herself towards Zecora. She didn't notice me. Was it the scent of my blood? Zecora's blood? Twilight looked like she'd gone feral and smashed herself into Zecora. chomping and biting at her neck. All the while, she was screaming in a harmonized cry, like she had 3 voices in her throat. "Blood!" she screamed, over and over again. There were no other words in the world, just the one thing she wanted more than anything. That's when I realized it. Ponyville's librarian, my sister, Twilight Sparkle, was gone.